Sweet. Now I am unmuted. Welcome everyone to Woven today. We're so glad that each of you are here, and Jill Campbell is with us. Yay! This is going to be our first week of something we've never done before. And my favorite part about being in this community is we do stuff that we've never done all the time. We have paint and a canvas, and we're going to do an art project together, and Danny's going to walk us through that cool project for this entire month. A couple of things on the announcement way. Tomorrow, D&D is back here at 6:30 in the Sunday school room. If you need to know where that is after service, just come talk to me, and I'll show you where that room is. And Wednesday is family dinner. And this would really help us all if you would just come tell me if you're coming or not before service is over. So you can just give me your name so then I know it, so then I can tell the people who are not here who to text, and we can get that moving. So those are really the things, a way of announcements. And we just want to say a very special welcome to all of you, regardless of your gender, your socioeconomic status, regardless of whether you believe in God or not. We are glad that you are here. And since we're talking about artistry this month, I'm going to start the service with a prayer called "For Believing in Your Art When No One Else Does." God of the artist, is this worth anything at all? To believe in my art feels impossible when my work has been rejected, dismissed, used, and discarded for so long. My ability to view the work for what it is fading. Can I be trusted to judge? Can anyone? Assure me in my calling as an artist that I would not turn away from myself out of insecurity or hopelessness. Grant me a sacred arrogance. Train me to marvel at my artistry with the same gravity that a stranger would. Help me to take myself seriously again. Not that I would avoid the difficult task of honing my craft, but that I would believe in my art enough to ask a deeper truth of it. And when belief wanes, remind me that I am enough on my own. And when the art isn't worthy, I still am. Amen. Now, welcome Danny up here as he is going to explain to us our fun art project.
Hi. It's kind of weird being up here because I've done so much prep work behind the scenes that it's now here and I'm here and oh my God. So I wrote things down because I knew that I would not remember what to say once I was up here. So, what is art? That's the question that I've been wrestling with for quite some time now, and honestly, I still don't have a good answer. I only have more questions. And in a lot of ways, that is exactly how I've been wrestling with God and spirituality. And I refuse to believe that I'm the only one here with this experience. So my hope, my vision, my desire for this project, and honestly this entire month, is for us to all physically engage with the abstract ideas of art, community, maybe even God, in a very physical way. I want us to get our hands dirty. And I don't want this to be perfect, because it's not going to be. And I want this to be fun and engaging, relaxing, and this week, I want it to be healing. So I want us all to work together to make this right here, right on this table, be something unique, something that will reflect us. So for that to happen, there's some logistics that I have to kind of set ground rules for this whole experience to go smoothly. So first of all, we are streaming. The cameras will be on a wide shot, so there will not be any close-ups, nothing like that. So if you don't want your face to be on camera, stand on this side of the table, and if you're fine with whatever, stand on this side, if you're comfortable with that. And then I'll also be taking pictures. I will not be taking any pictures of faces. It will only be hands and paintbrushes and paint and the canvas. But if you're uncomfortable with that, do let me know, and I will avoid taking pictures of your hands. Now, with the paints and paintbrushes, there's 6 different colors, 6 different jars of lots of paint, an absurd amount of paint if you ask me, and also lots of paintbrushes too. Once a paintbrush has touched paint, that is the paint color that it's sticking with. Please don't mix the paints. So if you dip a paintbrush in yellow, don't dip it into red, and vice versa. If you want a different color, trade brushes, get a new one, stuff like that. And then the jars with water are for the very end. Once we're done covering the canvas with paint, put the brushes into the paint into the water, so that it'll be easier for me to clean it up afterwards. And yeah, this is acrylic paint, so try not to get it on your clothes or anybody else's clothes, because it won't wash out. So have fun, but be very careful also. So let loose, but also don't. But if you do get it on your hands, you can go to the bathroom and wash it off with warm water and soap. It'll come off easy, I promise. So yeah, those are all the logistics. If you have questions, ask me. I'll try to answer. So yeah, today and every day, but especially today, everyone is an artist. And even if you just make one stroke here, that's enough. I heard that laugh, Alex. I love you. If I was on your seat, I would have laughed too. Yeah, I know. So yeah, if you're like me and having a brush in your hand and paint on your hands is your comfort zone, that's great. Have fun. Invite other people along with you into the fun. But if this whole setup is kind of pushing the limits of comfort for you, I've been there. And I invite you to take a step of faith, a leap of faith if you have to. Just come and make one stroke. It'll be fun, I promise. So know that you're safe to play, to let loose, to experiment in ways you haven't before. And yeah, that's all I have. So, please.
right, everyone. We are going to take a painting break. And you wind them up and you watch them go. And then after we finish our time together, if you want to come up and do a little bit more, you can. Danny, thank you for this. This is amazing. So if you can sort of finish up wherever you are, and then you can come back and finish at the end. And I want to, I know it's hard. It's hard to pull yourself away. I feel your pain. I feel your struggle. And I'm so happy to have my friend Jill here. For those of you who don't know, this is Jill, everyone. And Jill and I have a particular anniversary in common. At January 15, right? And so on January 15, we have our firing anniversary. The fire-versary. So I did want you to hear some of Jill's story. And then we're going to talk about art. In fact, we can talk about that as it goes along. But first of all, tell us some of your story. Like, you don't have to necessarily start with childhood, but I'd be interested in that too. But walk us up to now some of the highlights.
Well, I was born. No, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I grew up in a house that was not particularly religious by trade, and my mother is pretty strongly connected to the Native American community. She's Lumbee Indian in North Carolina.
Like, how much? Like a lot?
50%.
50%.
Yeah,
So
like
you're
my whole lineage on that.
25%.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So my whole side of that family is very Native. But we didn't live there growing up, so that was something interesting. My dad was from not that far from where my mom lived, and they met, and now I exist. And so
There you go.
that's how it goes, you know. But I grew up in Louisville and went to school there, and I feel like I had a pretty nice way to grow up. Like, my parents were very open about a lot of things. They were very loving to everyone.
Was that a church?
No, not church.
No church.
No, I kind of went in high school.
Okay.
With a friend of mine, but I was not a church kid all the time. And in fact, if we're being honest about it, it was because my mom decided at one point that we needed to go to church, and I was like, okay. And I went because they had music. And so when I went, I could sing hymns or hear the music. There was just something for me about music. So I stole a hymnal from the church when I was 9.
You know what God does to hymnal stealers.
Oh, I've heard. And
Yeah.
And so I took this hymnal home and hid it, and I would try to learn all this music alone in my room with a hymnal at 9 years old.
Any other hymnal stealers in here?
Come on, Fessa. Yes.
Serious, Bryce. Oh, that's how that works. Yeah,
That would be
yeah.
okay with me in my life. It's totally fine. But we had, so
I always just remember feeling like there was God, and I didn't really understand God, but I felt like God was love, and God was big and generous, and I didn't know if I was always big or generous, but I knew that there was like goodness there, I guess, is how I always felt as a kid. I used to spend
I mean, because that was with limited exposure.
yeah. But I used to go spend a lot of time in nature,
Yeah.
and like I would just it just felt like the world was such a place of like growth. I don't know, like the trees would grow, the grass would grow, we were all growing, you know. And so I just remember I would like make up songs like sitting under this tree just about like God and who was God and did I know God. And so at one point I remember I said to my mom and dad, well, I'd like to get baptized. They're like, well, we'll call a pastor. So they did, and I did. I was like 11 or something. And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. So that's how that worked.
What?
My poor parents, I just walked in one day. I was like, well, it's time to get baptized. And they're like, really? Say more. And then and they were like, well, if you're sure. So this pastor came over. He must have been about 180. And he came over to our house, and he sat down. He's like, well, do you believe Jesus died for your sins? And I was like, yeah, man. And he was like, I'll baptize you. And that was how it went. And then I kept, so that was like the beginning. And I was like, well, I read it in the Bible and read some books, and let's go. So that was kind of the whole beginning.
You're the only person I've ever heard with that story. That is really unique.
It's literally how it went. And I was just like, yeah. So I did. I got baptized at this random church.
Wouldn't it be cool if in general, kids with limited exposure, if that was their impression of God? That God was this kind being that you wanted to be involved with. Because I don't think that's most people's sense when they hear that somebody's a Christian. But that's amazing.
That's literally how it started. And then, and I went through high school and went to college, did a campus ministry. I went to UK.
Yeah, okay, to UK.
Went to UK, yeah, and did like a campus ministry, and that was fine. I didn't think, my family was not super conservative. And so my parents were always like, yes, like people, you should love all the people, be it, and I was like, yeah. And they were very like generous, philanthropic people. They just weren't super religious. I remember I talked to my dad at one point. I was like, Dad, like, do you believe in God? He's like, oh, yeah. And I was like, you do? And he's like, yeah, it's kind of private. And I was like, oh, okay. And then this is kind of funny. My mom passed away like a year and a half ago. And y'all, she was the funniest person you'd ever met and the kindest. I'll come back to her. But one day she called me and she's like, do you want to meet me in Louisville? There's a Billy Graham crusade. And I was like, sure. And so like, I was like, I don't really know much about Billy Graham. I don't really know what a crusade is, but yeah, I'll go. And so I met my mom, and then like they had like this, does anybody want to pray to accept Christ? And my mom's like, I'm going. And I'm like right now? She's like, are you coming or not? And I was like, wow. Oh, okay. So she did, and I went like down with her, and that was, and I don't know what her background had been, but that was like this moment, like she was like jumping out of her seat for Billy Graham. And I was like, all right. So I was there, and we shared that moment.
How old were you?
I was probably 20.
Okay. At UK?
Yeah. So that's how that got started. And then I had some roommates, and they went to this like Baptist church, and I didn't know anything about like conservative or liberal theology, but I was like, sure, I'll go with you. And like, I didn't realize that they didn't believe that women had all the same rights and et cetera, et cetera. But I did meet my husband at that church on accident. The the church was nice. Like, they were nice people. They did a lot of music, which so I kept going back.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So was music a part of your life in all of this?
Always. I would like make up the songs about God, and like I wanted to, I wanted to like anything that was happening that was musical, I wanted to do it. I wanted to ring the handbells, and I wanted to like sing in the choir or play violin in the worship band. Like, yeah, I'll do it. That sounds great. And so like it just kind of was a thing. And I ended up being a camp counselor, like at a Christian camp for a summer. And they're like, do you want to play violin in the band? I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know what you want me to do. But they're like, well, and that's how I got real good at music theory. Because they were like, here's the lead sheet. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And I just figure it out. And that's how I got started in music in that way. And so
it's a great way to do it.
yeah, it was really fun. So we did that. And then so I met my husband, who did grow up pretty conservatively. So that was kind of interesting.
That was at his church?
Yeah, it was at his church.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why I noticed him, because he always had an umbrella when it was going to rain. And I never thought to check the weather.
No, why would you?
I wouldn't. I would just get
I would
wet.
never
It's
do
fine.
that.
Right. So he had an umbrella when it rained. And I thought that was pretty.
You must be smart.
Thought that was pretty great. Because back in the old days, before you all were born, to check the weather, you had to make a phone call. You had to call the weather line, and it would just 24 hours a day.
This was a recorded line that would go over and over and over.
Yeah.
And then it changed day to day for
Like,
obvious reasons. It was a singular line.
Yeah, but you had to like call a phone number
Yeah.
on a phone.
Yeah.
And so I always thought he must really think ahead. And I'm like still not sure I was ever thinking ahead. You know what I mean? So anyway, we got married. And this will be our 20th wedding anniversary this year, so it worked out.
Wow, congratulations.
Thanks. We have 2 kids that are 15 and 17, and they're very different. But anyway, we got married, and then...
That's weird, because I found that siblings are always just like each other.
Yeah. I've got one boy who's very math and science and sports and all those things, and I've got one boy who's like, why do sports when you can sing about it? And I'm like, throw some glitter on that, and we're good to go. In fact, he's at tap dancing right now. So, yeah.
Wow.
I'm like, slay.
That's so impressive. Wow.
But so anyway, we got married, and then there came this point when I was like, I don't think I can be a Baptist. And he's like, you don't? And I was like,
You were still a Baptist through...
yeah, I just went. I mean, I was never really one, I guess.
Yeah,
but I was
yeah.
like, I can't do this. And because all of a sudden I realized that they didn't think women had the same rights as men. And, yeah, I was like...
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could do... It's okay to do this. Ooh.
Boo, yeah. Well, well, because then they were like, could you direct the choir this Sunday? And I was like, sure. I have a master's degree in music and in choral conducting. I think I can do it. And then the music minister came back to me and said, actually, the pastor says no because you have the wrong anatomy. And I was like, I don't have the wrong anything. You have the wrong mindset.
I'm out.
And I said, if you think it's okay for me to use talents that I've worked really hard for in the world, but not in the church, I have a problem with that. So I was like, I also can't come back. And that was really hard because my husband had been in that church like 30 years. And my in-laws went there. And he was like,
Wow.
yeah. So finally I was like, I just don't believe that. I don't believe in that. So I can't support it. And I didn't say much. I just thought, I'm just going to sit on this. But I told him, I was like, I'm not going back to choir. I'm not going back to helping with the youth. Like, I don't support what's happening. I went on the Southern Baptist website and said, you are wrong because this is the denominational statement. And they're like, oh, well, still our choice. So finally about 6 weeks later, he was like, I'm out. And I was like, great, let's go.
Good. So he joined you.
Yeah.
I'm sure the in-laws came right along.
No. No. But you know what? That's okay.
Are they still
They're still Baptist.
Yeah.
They think a lot. They worry about my eternity because I'm not
Well, of course.
a
Yeah,
Baptist.
Sure.
But I'm an ordained PCUSA elder.
Yes.
But it, yeah.
That doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
Actually, that counts on the
On the other
team.
side.
Yeah, that you lose points for that.
Right. Well, we went to the Methodist church for a long time, and then my husband just wasn't happy there. Like, he just wasn't happy. And so we ended up, I said, well, here's my list. And I'm afraid I'm going to offend some of you, and I don't want to.
You're okay. I can't imagine you would offend anybody.
Oh, not on purpose, but
Go for it, and then we'll tell you.
okay, if y'all start yelling boo, I'll know what it means. So my husband was like, well, you like all kinds of music. Why don't we try Southland? And I was like, I mean, we can try it. Because we did have the music stuff at Asbury together.
Yeah.
And we went, and 3 weeks in a row, I would just get up and like pack my stuff up in the middle of the sermon and leave, because I was like, this is just awful. And so finally he goes, well, I guess we won't be going back there. And so
Yeah,
I finally...
you haven't offended anybody.
Okay.
You have endeared yourself to people.
Well, I was like, I wrote a hotly worded letter to their pastor. He probably did never get it for many reasons. But I wrote this letter that said, I disagree with your philosophy on being a, quote, complementarian. I also don't think you're an actual complementarian. And I was like, here's why. And I said, I fully believe that God doesn't gift us based on AFAB or AMAB or whatever you want to be. But I said, God gifts us based on who we are. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was like, there's not like a pile if your DNA is this or this, or if it's somewhere in the middle. You know, I was like, that's just not how it is. So I said, but you, sir, pastor, I was like, all you do is talk about how you want your men to, quote, rise up. And I said, but if you...
We're not going to go anywhere with that one.
Sorry.
We're just going to leave that.
Sorry. But I said, and if that's true, I said, and if you fully believe that...
Wait, were those the actual words?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, like, maybe he hadn't thought through that all the way.
Funny. No, he did. He would all the time be like, our church has to have men rise up. I mean, he would talk about this all the time. It's funny. And he said,
wow, okay.
yeah, and
Wow.
But what I told him was, I said, but if you believed that men and women had separate but equal roles, you would spend the same amount of time on your preaching to the women in your congregation about their role. And you never talk to them. And your congregation out here is 70% or more women. And a lot of them are here by themselves. And you just don't talk to them. So it's like, you're not a complementarian. You're a patriarchist. So I was like, and I just don't believe that's God's will. I just don't believe it.
Good for you.
So that's how that went. And then I ended up, so we were Methodists, and then I ended up teaching at Asbury.
I remember when you came.
You do?
Yes, and somebody said, you need to meet this great person. And we met downtown at the ice cream shop.
Yes, Miss Marianne.
Yeah, it was Marianne that got us together. And we had a great talk.
We did. I actually thought that it was going to be very different. And it was. I have to tell you that it really was different for a long time.
Well, partly because certainly in what they would say with their mouths,
Yeah.
they are egalitarian. Women should be able to do everything.
Right, that's what they say. That's right. That's right.
With their
That's
mouth,
right.
that's absolutely what they would say.
But you know, when we first started, that was 2013, and Obama was president. And there was kind of a place for middle theology at the time. I mean, I thought I was kind of middle. I think now I'm like flamingly liberal.
Yeah. We're pretty left.
But yeah. But at the time it felt okay. Like it felt like, well, I remember being in faculty orientation, and they said something like, you don't have to believe everything we believe, you just have to know what we believe.
And assent to it.
Yeah. Well, and they like, it was like, you know, I remember that, and I thought, oh, good, this is going to be fine. And I was so excited to have this place where I felt like my faith could inform my work, which is music, which to me is like a divine communication. So I was really excited about teaching there, and I met really great friends and amazing students. I had some of the hardest working students, and and we formed this prison band, and we would go to the prison before the pandemic, and we went every week, and you
It was all
helped me.
female.
Yeah, it was this women's band, and we signed up to go to the women's prison, and they called us, and they're like, "Could you come to the men's prison?" Because they are segregated in that way. And I said, "Well, sure. Is everything okay?" And they're like, "No one will come to our men's prison." And I was like, "Well, men are people too, so let's go." So we went to the prison for 2.5 years till COVID shut it down, and I learned a lot by doing that. But I felt like that was something God had called me to do. Like I felt like I was able to integrate my person and like my heartbeat with what I did for work. And I was very thankful for that at the time.
And really, we were pretty happy at Asbury.
Yeah.
I mean, we were
Yeah.
having a good time, and we had
We did
wonderful students,
Yeah.
and we had great colleagues. And then January 15th,
January 15th.
2020.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
I was
you
so-
were first.
I
weren't
was
you?
first.
And then I came in after you.
I was so I was shook.
Yeah.
We were supposed to get our tenure contracts on that day by the order of the faculty manual, and we were both up for tenure, and it both had been recommended highly for tenure by the promotion and tenure
In
committee.
fact, my wife wrote your letter.
She did, and actually, do you know I still have it to this day?
Good.
It probably saved my sanity when that was the prayer you read this morning, and you're like, when people don't see value, or that's immediately what I thought of, because I had this like tangible way to see
Of her saying how wonderful you were.
just that she saw that
Yeah.
God working through me, and that was an encouragement to keep living, actually, because it was really tough. So they called me in, and I think they similarly, and the provost was like really nice, and he's like, "How are your kids doing?" and blah blah blah. I'm like, "Oh, everybody's great." And I had seen the president at a basketball game the night before, who had been somebody I'd lunch with every Wednesday for 6 years. And then all of a sudden he wouldn't sit with me at the basketball game, and he acted really weird. And I thought, maybe he has a lot on his mind, because we'd been friends for so long. And I was such a champion for him to get that job. And
Irony.
yeah. I mean, I was like, he would be great. I mean, from what I thought I knew, and I thought he knew. But I will tell you that he asked me right before he became president. He said, if there was one, and I didn't know he was going to be the president, but he said to me very directly, we had eaten lunch at the seminary, and we had walked back, and he said, if you could change one thing about Asbury, what would it be? He said, would you think about that and get back to me? And I said, I don't have to think about it. I know exactly what I would change. And he goes, you do? We sat down on the steps there, not going into the chapel. Yeah, but it's like the furthest one over,
Morrison.
Morrison. We sat right there on the steps, and I was like, it's the way that we treat folks who identify as LGBTQ. And I said, you and I might feel very differently about that topic, but I think that you're lying to yourself if you say that we serve the world. I don't think we're serving that population here. I think that we speak about students in a terribly negative way. We don't talk about them as people, as humans with souls that God made and loves. And I was like, and I find it to be our worst trait as a school. And right after that's when I got fired. But he was like, oh. And I was like, I said, I don't think that the language that you use is kind or open or generous in spirit. And I said, I think even if you and I have disagreements, I said, I think you need to be respectful of people's civil rights. And so I told him. And I was like, it's probably pretty funny coming from some old kind of white straight woman, but I was like, but it's true, that's, and so then they called me in, and they just said, well, we've heard things about you. And I was like, well, tell me what they are. And they're like, no, we don't have to. We don't have to tell you that. And I was like, okay.
Did they say, we don't think you fit at Asbury?
They actually, the word that they used, which is burned into my heart now, was, we don't believe that you have the ethos of a Christian person who you would want to work here. You don't have the character we're looking for to shepherd our students. Yeah. And I was like, so when were you going to share that with me before this minute? And then he started pulling out legal paperwork and told me that if I told anybody before a certain time, that they would take my keys, cancel my health insurance, walk me off campus, and that would be the end. And I was like, well, that sucks. And I was just like, what am I going to do? And I was like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave these precious, precious kids. There were almost 90 people in the women's choir. And we sang like for the biggest state festival. I mean, like things were rocking. I felt like it was going well. The program I was working with had grown 500% since I started working there. I was a class sponsor for the Merciful class. My husband and my children and I were for 4 years. And didn't have the ethos until they were ready.
Not the character. So that was a hard day.
Well, and when I was walking out of the building is when my dad called me and told me my mom's cancer was back. And I was like, well, this is not good. And I called my husband, and he was a teacher at Dunbar at the time. And I said, I need you to come home. And he was like, what? And I was like, I just need you to come home. I was afraid to look at anyone. I was afraid to talk to anyone. I found out that they had told the board of trustees that this was probably their plan 2 months ago. So I was standing up like leading Christmas chapel and stuff, and they all knew and were just looking at me. And it made me feel really sad. And my colleagues weren't very supportive. They were like, oh, there must be something wrong with you. And I'll tell you when they changed their tune was when the next year when people got fired again, when they said they were concerned about race. They were teaching too much about race. That's why? Yeah, sorry. But, and this one particular teacher, she called me because when I had been let go, she's like, well, you are affirming. And I was like, yeah, of all of God's people. I don't understand. My church is affirming. Like, how is this an issue? And then when she called me the next year and she's like, I've lost my job. And I was like, so see, when it happened to more than just us, and then things like that started happening, that's when people started to actually think that maybe it wasn't just an us problem, I felt like.
I think since it was the two of us, I think a lot of people knew pretty quickly, wait, there's something else going on here. And you weren't allowed to say anything for those
no,
first
but I will tell you that I did get them to pay off my doctorate loans.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, I can't fight you because it's technically one day before I would have a tenure contract, which is a permanent contract. But I was like, but you can dismiss these loans. And they did within like 5 minutes. So they knew.
Yeah. We are going to run out of time quickly.
I'm sorry.
And I want to at least start in on the subject of, I know this was really painful. And I know where God was in this. God wasn't the administration. God was so present with you. Where was art in all of this?
That was probably like the saving grace of the whole thing. I believe that we have the arts to help us have a different way of communicating our souls. And I think that's God-given. So for me, that's always been music, and I'm not the world's best musician or the world's best teacher or definitely not the world's best painter. But I would listen to music or songs with just like during my mom's whole sickness and like during hospice and trying to find another job and like all this stuff, which by the way, now I'm on faculty at EKU. They actually called me and they were like, we heard you're looking for a job and we have one open and we don't like bigots. Would you like to work here? We think you'd be great. And it has been so different for me. I'm so thankful. In fact, they're sending me to teach a summer class in Salzburg this summer. And I have multiple trans kids coming with us, and they have taken care of each one of them, like what they need. It's been beautiful. But there was this old song. You probably know it. It's probably too old. But I literally, sometimes it'll just pop in my head, and I'll just sing it for like a long time. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He's so good to me. And I just think, and I think about that song, and I thought about, I sit at my piano a lot, and I play hymns, like old hymns. I'm not good at the piano part, and I didn't grow up, with a lot of that, but like.
Except for the one you stole.
Except for the hymnal I stole, which, by the way, is still on my piano today. Yeah, I did call the church, by the way, and told them I stole a hymnal when I was like in my 20s. And they were like, we would just love for it to be a gift for you. Thank you. But yeah,
Absolution.
so I think that music has actually been, when they talk about a balm in Gilead, like a balm being like something that fills in the creases or like the scars. And I'm 45 now, and so I have a few more wrinkles. And when I put on, like, I just use like a little brush powder foundation. It's from Sephora. But like when I brush it on and like it just kind of feels a little smoother, and I feel like that the Bible tells us that God, like, we were made for abundance. And so I feel like not having to sit in those scars every day, learning to get through that took a lot of therapy and a lot of medication and a really great friends and family that I just decided I need to be honest with when it got really hard.
I know a few of you have been through hard times. Any of you have music that was really meaningful to you through that time? I just wonder how many of you was that a thing for? I think for me, it's for sure been a healing part of the journey. Would you come back another time with us?
Yeah, if you want, sure.
All right. We will have a family dinner. It's a week from Wednesday.
Do you want me to cook it?
No, it's this Wednesday.
I cook a lot.
Sorry, it's this Wednesday. This Wednesday. Danny cooks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we have about this many or more at my house.
If I could just say one thing, it's just that I just hope that everybody finds the thing that helps them connect to God in a way that doesn't feel harmful or judgmental, like that it's just there. And that I just keep imagining that, like, I don't think God gives up on us. Like, through this journey of listening to what the, quote, Christians said, but then also walking, my mom passed away, and right before my mom passed away, very unexpectedly, we lost my brother, who was 38. And what I've sort of come to is I think that it's evolved my theology to being more loving and more unconcerned with what's not a kingdom issue, you know? whoever you are, if you're authentic in yourself, you're exactly who you should be. You know? Like, that's something I think about, and I just can't imagine that when we get to our finish line, that there won't be some sort of music, and there won't be God just going, I just love you. That's my goal. So I hope you find your music too.
Thank you so much, Jill. And right along that line, we're going to take a little time of invitation to the table, so you can go back and get a goldfish or two and some juice, and then bring it back and we'll do this together. Jill, what you said, well, it all resonated with me, of course, but the idea of if it's not about love, then it's not about God. And what we take here today is this is love. This is representative of love. It's not about dogma. It's not about a particular belief. This is a representation of love that we eat and drink together. I want to thank you for being here. You bring joy to my heart and joy to this place. This is a wonderful place that I've found to be a wonderful home for me, and you're part of that. Thank you. Thank you, Jill, for being here. We will find a way to have you back. We have so much we want to learn from you. And you're welcome to. And Danny, thank you for your part so much. Thank you. We love you all. Let Logan know if you can come Wednesday so that Danny knows how many to cook for. And I hope you have a great week. Love you all.